Hello, welcome back, Recapped Mystery here. Today, I'm going to explain a drama, adventure, sci-fi film, The Martian. Watch out and take care. Outside of their ship, 4 astronauts collect rock samples from Mars. Their colleagues inside warn them that a storm is on its way, and it will be far worse than they had anticipated. It is suggested that they come inside. The crew is debating whether they should wait out the storm or take off. Most want to take a chance and stay, but the commander uses her authority to make a decision. They will go. While preparing to take off, the ship is damaged by debris flung around by the storm, and they attempt to fix it. Mark, one of the crew, is hit by some debris and sent flying away from the rest as they fight to solve the situation and return inside. The debris disrupts his communication systems, and the rest of the team is unable to contact him. The storm worsens, and the crew cautions that the ship won't be able to endure the wind for much longer, and that they must leave soon. The captain orders her troops to return inside, but she stays behind to seek for Mark. She does her best, but she must return inside if the rest of her squad is to be saved. As they leave Mars, the team laments the death of a buddy. The director of NASA conducts a news conference to inform the public that their trip to Mars was a success and that the team is on their way home, but that one of the astronauts perished. Mark awakens on Mars, half buried in the sand, his suit emitting various alerts about his oxygen levels and blood pressure. When he stands up, he discovers that he has been stabbed by some debris. He trims the surplus but keeps the metal rod in place to keep the air pressure consistent within his suit. He returns to the base, enters, and surgically removes the debris from his abdomen before stapling the wound shut. Mark activates a video log and recounts what happened to him for the record, saying that the debris disabled his communications systems but left his suit sealed. He makes it plain that he does not blame his crew for abandoning him, that they had every cause to believe he was dead. He realizes that another manned expedition to Mars will take at least 4 years, and that he will run out of food well before that. He moves around, inspecting the items his employees left behind and putting some of their possessions away. He walks over the base's stocks and keeps a thorough track of how much food he has left, realizing he only has enough food for a year and will need to find a way to grow 3 more years worth of food. Fortunately, Mark is a botanist, and he decides to plant some potatoes that the team had taken with them to eat for Thanksgiving. He begins cleaning the solar panels, bringing loads of dirt inside and spreading it around, and even going through the trash of the cruise to make fertilizer. He tills the soil and plants the potatoes within. He realizes he doesn't have enough water to water all of the crops as much as he needs to, so he goes to work devising a means to create additional water. He constructs a machine that generates water by igniting little chemical fires, and after a few days, the inside walls of the garden are coated in condensation, and the plants begin to sprout. Back on Earth, NASA is holding a memorial service for Mark. Vincent approaches the director about returning to Mars and recovering the equipment Mark's team abandoned, but the director declines, stating that everything they do must be aired, and he does not want the public to see Mark's body. Therefore they must wait. Vincent informs out that Mark's body will never decompose on Mars, and that they might structure the expedition to appear as if they were returning to Mars to retrieve Mark's remains for his family. Mindy, a satellite supervisor, receives coordinates that guide her to Mark's location, and she detects movement at the facility. She instantly calls the director to notify him of the emergency. They realize that this tape proves Mark is still alive, and they try to figure out what they're going to tell the public because they have 24 hours to disseminate this footage. They are concerned that NASA may face criticism for abandoning one of their astronauts. They decide to arrange a news conference to inform the public that they will do everything possible to bring Mark home alive. Mark studies charts at the base of Mars to determine where he needs to be in 4 years to meet the next Mars mission. It's nearly 3,200 kilometers away, and his rover can only drive 35 kilometers at a time. Furthermore, the journey from the base to the objective will take him about 50 days. He gets to work on modifying the rover so that it can travel further without having to return to the base to be recharged. He is successful in tripling the battery life, but in order to do so, he has switched off the warmth in the rover. He won't be able to endure the trip without heat because it's so cold, so he decides to dig out some radioactive material to keep in the rear to keep him warm. NASA holds another press conference to inform the public that they have found out Mark's purpose by tracking him on their satellites, to meet the next Mars mission when they arrive. They've cut the expected completion time from 4 years to 9 months in the hopes of reaching Mark before anything horrible occurs to him. They decide not to inform Mark's crew that he is still alive since they don't want to disrupt them while they are still attempting to go home. Mark gathers 400 potatoes from his garden, planting the smaller ones and saving the larger ones for later consumption. He locates the Pathfinder, a rover lost on Mars several years ago, and uses it to connect with NASA via the duplicate they have on Earth. The only thing NASA can do with it is move the camera around, but Mark devises a communication mechanism based on hexadecimals so that he can ask more than just yes or no questions. NASA utilizes the Pathfinder to advise Mark on how to hack into the rover and connect with NASA via the Pathfinder. Mark is relieved when Vincent tells him about their plan to rescue him. Mark wants to know how his team responded when they discovered he was still alive, but Vincent has to admit that his crew is still unaware. Mark is enraged that NASA has kept his team in the dark, and Vincent realizes that they must inform the crew. When Mark's crew travels to fetch their mail, they receive messages from NASA informing them that Mark is still alive and that they intend to try to save him. Mark calculates that with all of the food left over on the base and all of the potatoes he has grown, he has just enough food to last until NASA can send another ship to come collect him, assuming nothing goes wrong. The entrance chamber explodes while Mark is tending to his garden, hurting him and cracking his helmet. To replace his oxygen, he swiftly seals it with duct tape. When he returns to his garden, he discovers that the exposure to Mars' atmosphere has killed all of his plants and ruined the mechanism he had set up to keep them watered. Mark informs NASA of the accident, and they realize that if they do not shorten the schedule for arriving to Mark, he will not have enough food to endure until they arrive. NASA grants Mark's previous crew permission to contact him, and they catch up, heckling one another. Mark cleans up the area of the base he set aside for growing potatoes, removing the tarp and soil and resealing the hole where the hatch used to be. NASA decides to bypass checks on the spacecraft they want to use to rescue Mark, claiming that there is likely nothing wrong with it and that the inspection will take up needless time. The ship explodes at launch, destroying all of their hard work. China's space branch observes the news coverage of NASA's unsuccessful launch and offers assistance. NASA is able to devise a better plan to rescue Mark in less time with the assistance of Rich, a physicist. The Hermes, Mark's ship, will swing back into Earth's orbit long enough to receive a fresh supply of food before shooting back into space to pick up Mark without landing. The plan's only flaw is that it will add 500 days to Hermes' trip time. The plan is vetoed by NASA's director, who explains that he does not want to jeopardize the lives of everyone on board the Hermes in order to save Mark. Another NASA coordinator thinks this is unjust and secretly transmits the plan specifics to Hermes. Mark's crew debates the plan amongst themselves, realizing that carrying it out will constitute mutiny. They debate whether they want to spend another 500 days in space away from their family, but ultimately conclude that it is the right thing to do. It takes a unanimous vote to send Mark back. Each crew member contacts their families to inform them that they will be gone for a longer period of time than anticipated. NASA is told that the Hermes has deviated from its intended path, and the director chastises the other coordinator for surreptitiously delivering the plans to the crew. To make the plan work, Mark must figure out how to move all of the equipment that is keeping him alive, the devices that provide him with heat and oxygen, to the spacecraft in time to meet up with the Hermes as they pass Mars. The Hermes swings by Earth, picking up supplies and using the gravitational pull of Earth's atmosphere as momentum to propel them back towards Mars with less fuel. After 7 months, Mark begins to prepare for his meeting with Hermes. He gets all of his equipment and loads it into the rover. He brings the solar panels with him so he may recharge the rover without having to return to the base. According to NASA, Mark's ship will have to travel at high speeds in order to catch up with the Hermes, so they tell Mark to remove all of the equipment that is no longer needed. He removes all of the supplies intended for a 6-person team, leaving only enough for the one-person expedition. He is also directed to remove the spacecraft's front and sides and replace them with tarps to minimize weight, as well as to remove any control panels because the Hermes will be running his ship remotely. Mark exits the rover for the final time and enters the spacecraft to prepare. He shaves his beard, puts on new clothes and a spacesuit, and waits for instructions from his team. They reassure him and tell him that the force of the launch may lead him to pass out. Mark's ship takes off, and the tarps are quickly pulled into space. Mark collapses and is unable to speak with his crew to let them know he is well. When Mark awakens, his crew advises him that they will be unable to get their spacecraft near enough to Mark's. The commander orders one of the crew members to build an explosive and rig it to the back of the ship in order to slow them down and give them a greater chance of reaching Mark. They detonated the bomb and are now within range of Mark's ship, but not near enough to reach him. The commander dons a spacesuit, buckles herself onto a chair outside the spacecraft, tethers it with a length of rope, and walks over to Mark. Unfortunately, the line isn't long enough, so Mark tears a hole in his suit and guides himself to the commander using air pressure. She catches him, reels him in, and they return inside to join the rest of the team. They informed NASA that they had Mark and were on their way home. Mark is back on Earth some years later, lecturing NASA recruits about space safety and preparedness. The Ares 4 takes off, and the crew members of the Hermes watch it on television with their loved ones. Please subscribe to assist the channel, turn on notification and leave a like. Thank you for taking the time to watch. See you again soon.